And you thought they wouldn't make fun electric cars. This is the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, a new fully electric car for Hoons, by Hoons, and it's an absolute bloody hoot to drive fast. But there are some issues when it comes to living with this car on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to tell you all about it in this review, so stay tuned, and if you haven't, please subscribe, it helps a lot. Let's go. $111,000 plus on-road costs. That is a lot of money for a new car, a lot of money for a Hyundai, the most expensive Hyundai ever, and also the most expensive N model ever. But look, despite the fact that you could buy two entry-level Hyundai Ioniq 5s for about the same kind of cash, this one's got more power and torque. So if that's what really matters to you, and if the N element to this car is what you're buying it for, then you're going to love it, because it does have all the stuff you would expect as standard plus N stuff. So I'll go through some of the standard spec first. You've got LED lighting all around the car, and you've also got a big glass roof. You've got keyless entry, push button start, and a pair of 12.3-inch screens, some beautiful seats with manual adjustment. So they are more manually adjustable. You can get to the right driving position with this car, which you can't in some other N models in the range. And heaps of specific Hyundai N elements to this car, including 21-inch forged alloy wheels with aero intakes. You've also got specific Pirelli P0 HN tyres, so they are designed specifically for this car. And there's huge brakes behind them, 400 millimeters up the front, 360 in the back. So look, it goes and it stops, believe me, I'll show you later on. You've also got electronically controlled suspension, so you can adjust the feeling of the drive experience and the steering and the power delivery as well. There's also an electronic limited slip differential, and you've got some pretty handy stuff when it comes to torque distribution adjustments as well. So if you are actually planning to take this car to a track, you can basically dial it into whatever level you want it to be to make this car whatever monster you want it to be. Look, I didn't do the track drive at the launch of this car, but hey, I can recommend some of the better content out there. If you are interested in track content, see the description below and you'll be able to check out some of the better videos out there showcasing the skills and depth of capability of the Ioniq 5N, because I'm not going to show you that in this review. This one is about living with the car. So is it good to live with, and are there other options that you might find are easier to live with? Let me tell you some alternatives now. Rightio, so you want a really fast EV. There are some fantastic options out there that you might want to consider, including the Tesla Model Y Performance. It is really, really fast, and if you're a family car buyer, then it could stand out maybe a little bit more than something like this, and actually not stand out from the crowd in the same way that this does, and that might appeal to you. I can totally understand that. It's very practical, and it does start at a lower price point than this, so it could be a great choice. Now, the alternative to this that I personally would probably choose is the Kia EV6 GT. It's about $100,000. I know that's a lot of money, but it does do almost everything this car can do. Maybe not with the fun factor, but it does have a seriously sporty drive experience, and it feels fantastic on the inside. It feels more mature, and if that's what you like, then maybe the Kia EV6 would be a better choice for you as well. And finally, you might also want to check out the MG4 X-Power. Now, I know it's hardly the same sort of car. It's really fast in a straight line, and that's about it. But hey, it's still very, very fast in a straight line, and it's 60,000 bucks. So it might make a whole lot more sense for you and your budget. But tell me which one you would pick, or would you choose something different? Let me know in the comments. The Ioniq 5N is actually a little bit bigger than the standard Ioniq 5 because it's got all this extra aerodynamic stuff happening. You've got these sporty aerodynamic bumpers front and rear, and you've also got some aerodynamic stuff going on down here at the back on the door, so it helps feed some cold air onto the brakes at the back. And look, in profile, this car still looks absolutely bloody phenomenal, I reckon. You've got some extra orange bits around the bottom edges of the car to make it stand out, as if it actually needed to stand out even more. And at the back, well, you've still got those LED signature lights and some extra aerodynamics down at the rear air dam. It's like a bloody rally spec rear bumper down there. Okay, so you do have an electric tailgate, as you would expect, and the boot space on offer isn't huge, considering this car is 4.7 meters long, so as long as most mid-size SUVs and some 7-seaters. The boot space isn't massive. You'll see the figure on your screen now, and you tell me if you think you could make that work for you and your life, but it is maybe just a little bit small for the size of the car, but you can still fit a pram and some luggage, some shopping bags and school bags in there, but don't go planning like a month-long road trip if you are a heavy packer. All right, so boot space underneath the boot floor, well, there's not very much underneath the boot floor to talk about. There's an N embossing under there. There's no spare wheel. You do have a spot for your charge cables and stuff like that, but you don't get a spare. So that might factor into your considerations. And also you do get some handy things in the back. You've got a light. You've also got a cargo cover, obviously. No shopping bag hooks though, so that's not ideal. So what do you think? Is the person who's buying an Ioniq 5N really going to care that much about boot space? All right, does it feel any different to a standard Ioniq 5? Yeah, in the important ways it does. It feels more like a special model compared to the other Ioniq models, and it does have a heap of features that you will really appreciate. In terms of the drive experience, in terms of making you feel like you're driving something that's a bit more special, you've got these N seats, which we aren't able to get in some other models like the Hyundai i30N. They have illuminated N badges. They are manually adjustable. So it is a little bit different. It stands apart from other N models, and I'm all for that. These seats are fantastic. They are super supportive, but still very comfortable as well. Wide enough for someone with larger hips like myself to be able to fit in here pretty comfortably. And yeah, look, the amenities, obviously it's just like the other Ioniq 5s, except you don't get the clever sort of opening glove box that you do in that car. It slides out. This one is just an opening one. It's a little bit smaller, and this sort of center area is a little bit different from memory as well. So you've got a wireless phone charger here, which is good. You've got some cup holders, but there's less stuff to get in your way when you are tackling a track, I assume, but also if you are just living with the car on a day-to-day basis. Now, speaking of living with it, you've got these big screens. You've got 12.3-inch screens for the driver and for the infotainment system, and thankfully you've still got an array of buttons for controls down below, and your climate controls are down below there as well. They are on a touch sensitive pad, but at least it's pretty easy to get your head around and your hands on as well. Now, the infotainment screen, fine. Really seems to work pretty well. You will get to know it pretty well as well because, well, you have to turn off some features that you might not like if you want to turn them off, including the speed sign recognition system, which is showing up here on the driver's info screen, and it will basically beep at you very regularly. And if you're driving in a place that's familiar to you and you don't necessarily want to be reminded of what the speed limit is all the time, it gets on your nerves, trust me. But otherwise, look, this layout, beautiful. This steering wheel, gorgeous. I love the fact that you've got a couple of N buttons to basically quickly jump into different modes if you need to. You've got your N Grin Boost mode button there as well. A drive mode selector, paddle shifters, which actually act like paddle shifters in this car, and you can use them as regen actuators as well. Also mention that you've got your gear selector down here off the steering column, and maybe that's in the way for some people because there's not much clearance between my knee and this. If you're a big unit, then you might find that it's in the way. Let's check out the back seat. Backseat space is excellent, for the most part at least, because, well, like a lot of EVs, you do have a high floor, so that means that you don't necessarily have as much space to scooch your toes in underneath the driver's seat. But hey, this seat is set for my driving position. Look how much knee room I've got. I'm sure I could just cross my legs, except my feet are too big. So I guess that's just a me problem. Now, seat comfort, very good, and it's also a 60-40 split if you do need to fold the seats down. You've got all the stuff you would expect in terms of amenities, a flip-down armrest with cup holders, got a couple of USB-C charge ports, your B-pillar mounted air vents, which I really like. I reckon they are more effective if you do need to fit a child seat and a child in the back of your Ioniq 5. And yes, you've got ISOFIX and 3 top tether points too. Yep. That glass roof does make a difference back here, and also you've got these great LED lights which do shine in the right spot at night too. So look, there's not much to complain about from the backseat experience unless you're a big footer like me, but hey, it's pretty good. And if you do have kids, you've got these sunshades on the windows as well to make it even gloomier in the back. It's like a cocoon if you want it to be. Okay, let's talk about charging. Your charge port is here at the back of the car on the driver's side. So if you're a bad reverser, might not be the ideal car for you, but look, it does have a Type 2 combination plug like other Ioniq 5 models, and the AC charge rate, maximum rate, is 10.5 kilowatts, which is faster than some other EVs out there. And if you've got 3-phase at home, it means a pretty fast charge time overnight if you need to. If you don't, if you've got a 7 kilowatt wall box, it's going to take about 10.5 hours. So it's still relatively fast. If you need to go to a DC charger or do rapid charging, if you can find a really fast one, this car can cope with up to 350 kilowatts according to Hyundai. I've never seen that in practice though. So if you can find a really fast charger, it still should be able to do 10 to 80% in something like 18 minutes, which is still relatively fast, a bit quicker than having to fill up with petrol and then go into the servo and choose your ice cream or something like that. But hey, tell me if you think that's good enough, and also tell me if you think the range is good enough for this car. You'll see the figure on your screen now. That's the WLTP rated range for the Ioniq 5N. And hey, let's just say you won't achieve that if you drive it fast. So it does have massive power and torque outputs. You'll see them on your screen now for this dual motor electric vehicle. So there's a motor at the front axle, one at the back. It's all-wheel drive, and the outputs are enormous. They're even bigger when you put it into N-Grin boost mode, which will give you the maximum power and torque available to you for a short period of time, meaning you'll be able to get from 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds, which is phenomenally fast. I'll show you that in a sec. And I also want to tell you that while it does have a single speed transmission, it doesn't act like a normal EV in terms of the drive experience because, well, it behaves more like an 8-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. Let's go for a drive and I'll show you what I mean. So on a day-to-day basis, I find this car to be really quite livable. The ride is not too firm. You do feel more of the road surface than you do in a standard Ioniq 5, obviously, but it's also actually pretty composed in terms of the way that it handles itself over bumps. Considering the size of these wheels, they are bloody huge. It does have a pretty measured drive experience to the comfort factor anyway. And the steering, well, it does its best job through the corners, obviously, but it's still usable in different situations. Parking's not too big of a task, although it does have a pretty big turning circle, so you need to be aware of that. And also, it's nice and heavy. I like the weighting of it. Even in this normal driving mode, it does feel, well, like you are in control and you feel like you're feeling what's happening at the front axle. The goal with this review was just to tell you what it's like to drive in normal situations, and for that reason I've been in normal drive mode. That's why you can hear that rather strange sort of wispy humming sound that's emitted through the speakers. I'll change it to a different mode just to see what happens. That's in Sport, which same sound. In Eco, it's muted, but it's still there, and the throttle response is muted as well. And the steering becomes a bit lighter to make it a bit more urban friendly. So if you are planning to live with this car day to day and only occasionally go for a bit of a faster drive, then Eco mode might actually be a pretty nice mode to stay in. But it's not about that, it's about the N mode. So let me just press one of these N buttons on the steering wheel. Yeah, that sound gets annoying, I can tell you that. We're only going 50 k's an hour right now, and that's the noise that is coming in through the speakers. It's not good. I don't love it. Put it into a different N mode, and that's the one that's supposed to sound like a 4-cylinder N model, like the i30N. Check out my review in the description. And look, it does sound like one, and you can simulate gear shifts as well. So it doesn't actually have gear shifts, but it will cut torque to make it feel like you've got a shift happening, even though you don't. And it's an 8-speed transmission as well. So you do have gears to play with. You've got paddle shifters that will change gears, and you even get the N crackle. So, I mean, it's a really immature car, and I like that about it. It's not necessarily like any other EV, really, although some other brands are starting to make their cars that are electric a little bit more characterful, like the Abarth version of the Fiat 500. Review of that one is coming soon. So it definitely has some fun factor to it. And look, you might find that if you've got your kid in the back and you want to make them have a bit of a chuckle if they're maybe not in the happiest mood, you can just give it a little bit of a blat and have that fake exhaust pop and crackle in the background. And look, I think that that's a bit of fun. It's probably not the mode I would stay in every time I drove it. So put it back into normal mode now, and look, yes, it is a lot of fun, this car, and it does have immense acceleration. There is no denying that this is one of the fastest electric cars on the planet, even in normal mode, and it is really, really good to drive, like far out. Yes. Sphincter clenched. And it's also got all-wheel drive traction, and those tires are immensely grippy. And like, yes, there are different drift modes and different other drive modes that you can jump in through the N menus on the screen to adjust, but on public roads, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you do that. If you are planning to take it to a track, you can exploit this car. That's what it wants you to do. So make sure that if you are gonna engage any of those N modes, that you definitely take it where it's safe to do so. Just going to do a simulated gear shift up here. Crackle, crackle. I think the most impressive thing about that simulated shifting is that there is like a jolt through the cabin, like a PDK transmission in a Porsche. You get that really mechanical feel through the body of the car because it's cutting torque to the wheels, and it's just taking away a little bit of your torque to basically simulate that there's a shift happening. It really is a fantastic little innovation from Hyundai N, and I applaud them for it. I mean, you know, cars like these are pretty easy to find a little bit soulless and a little bit, I guess, clinical in the way that they do things, but that is not the case with this particular car. It is an absolute beast, and it's just so much fun. Oh, fuck, I love this car. It's just so much fun. And look, I reckon what's most of... Shut up, man. It's just so much fun. And I reckon what is most impressive about it is that while the standard Hyundai Ioniq 5 is an absolute corker of a car, it's also very, very different to this. So it's not like they've just tuned things up to make it a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit sportier. It's a completely different car, and it feels completely different to drive. But there's that turning circle issue. It's got a terrible turning circle, people. All right. Oh, oh man, this is great fun. Yes, they've sort of thought of everything with this car. If you put it into eco though, you don't get those simulated shifts. So it's just like a regular EV to drive. And yes, it does have the things you would expect of a regular EV, including regenerative braking with a single pedal driving mode and some serious recuperation as well in the more serious drive modes. So it can recoup heaps of energy while you are on the track or something like that. So it does definitely tick a lot of boxes for an electric car that has fun factor to it. So is it efficient? Well, let me tell you about that now. All right, on your screen, you'll see the official energy consumption, the WLTP rated figure for this Ioniq 5N. And look, that's actually pretty good if you can achieve it. In most situations, you're probably not going to achieve it because, well, this car eggs you on a little bit. So if you're wondering what I've seen over a few days of testing this car in all sorts of the situations that you might find yourself in, including giving it a bit of a bootful every now and then. You'll see the number on your screen now, and I've got to say, I was impressed with that. I've driven some other smaller SUVs with dual motor layouts that used much more than that. So yeah, it's ticking boxes, I'm telling you. While the regular Ioniq 5 does have the 5-star ANCAP safety rating, the N is currently unrated, but it does have all the same sort of standard safety technology that you find in the high-grade versions of this car. It does have autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control. There's a lane keeping system with a highway assistance feature, so it can basically do the steering and the accelerating and braking for you. There's also a blind spot camera system and blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, and it'll also brake for pedestrians or obstacles when you're reversing as well if it doesn't think you're going to. It's got a surround view camera system, but it's only got 6 airbags, so dual front, front side and full length curtain. There's no front center airbag, no driver's knee airbag, which puts it behind the times in some ways, but hey, if it's got all that crash avoidance stuff, maybe you won't need those airbags after all. And obviously it does also have that new speed sign recognition system that's been rolled out across other Hyundai models. And if you're a Hyundai N customer, there's a good chance you're gonna hate that technology. If you choose a Hyundai, you get a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty in Australia. If you choose an electric Hyundai, you get an 8-year 160,000k warranty for the battery pack, which is on par with most other brands. But there's also warranty coverage for track use with this car, with any Hyundai N car. So that's pretty good to know. If you actually plan to use this car to its full potential and take it to a track, then you will be covered to a degree. Just make sure you read the terms and conditions on the company's website. Now, there's also a cap price servicing plan for the Ioniq 5N. You'll see the service intervals on your screen now. Yes, they are very, very lengthy. If you plan to adhere to them, wow, that's a long time between visits to the Hyundai service centre, and the service pricing is actually pretty good too, I reckon, considering this is a performance car and you're not paying performance car maintenance costs when you consider that. There's also roadside assist included too, so if the worst came to the worst and your battery ran out on the way back from a track day or something, you'd be covered for that too. It's good to know, right? If you can justify this kind of money on this kind of car, then I reckon you're going to be pretty happy. But look, $111,000 before on-road costs is a heck of a lot of money, in my opinion. Maybe it's not in yours, but this car certainly does have serious fun factor, serious fast factor, and it's fully electric. And if those are the 3 things that you prioritize, well, go and buy one. But if you aren't necessarily sold on it, I can totally understand, because there are some compromises with this car and it's not perfect. But tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you choose it? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.